Brent, Governor Lamont's agreement with the Mohegan Tribe looks to modernize gambling here in Connecticut, even making it possible to gamble online right on your phone. But not everyone is on board just yet. Among the topics on the Public Safety and Security Committee's list Thursday, sports betting and online gaming in Connecticut.
Item number 1 is proposed Senate Bill 570.
Lawmakers voting in favor of drafting that bill. This week, Governor Lamont reached a deal with the Mohegan Tribe that would expand gambling in Connecticut. It includes a 20% tax rate on iGaming and a 13.75% tax on sports betting, expected to bring in tens of millions of dollars of revenue.
Over half the states in the United States have really taken advantage of the fact that sports betting is now legal across the United States. So obviously, Connecticut is a little late to the party.
And we're still not quite there yet. The state hasn't come to an agreement with the Mashantucket Pequot Tribe. Governor Lamont saying Thursday he's hoping it'll be reached soon.
And I think we're pretty close. This is a transformative time in the gaming industry. The world is moving virtual. Both tribes know how important it is, as does the lottery in the state of Connecticut.
At a public hearing Tuesday, Mashantucket Pequot Tribe Chairman Rodney Butler said they were close to a deal.
We are literally on the 1-inch line. We are literally down to 1 point, literally down to 1 point.
That was just hours before Lamont announced a deal with the Mohegan Tribe, Butler calling the announcement, quote, extremely disrespectful. The Connecticut Lottery is included in the agreement as well, part of it being that it can undertake new sports betting venues in Hartford and Bridgeport.
I'd like to see in the very near future, Bridgeport being the mega center of sports betting in the state of Connecticut.
Jason Chung, Executive Director of Esports at the University of New Haven, says the opportunities are there for the state to take.
Right now, I think the priority for the state, quite rightly, is to boost revenues and tourism and to really capture all that gambling activity in sports betting and online gambling that's available.
Chung says that it's not just about the revenue, though. March is Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and he says that it's something that the state needs to address if it does move forward with expanding gambling, addressing how it could impact people as well. Live in Hartford, Gabby Molina, Fox 61 News.